Record-breaking seal rescue at Cape Cross. Team saves 6 in one run. Sarah Matthews had always known her life would be devoted to marine mammals, but she never imagined it would lead her to this moment. Standing at the windswept overlook of Point Reyes National Seashore at 5:30 a.m., she watched the first hints of dawn paint the California coastline in muted grays and silvers. The forecast had predicted clear skies, but a stubborn bank of fog clung to the shoreline, transforming the beach below into a ghostly landscape where the barks of unseen seals echoed like phantom voices. At 53, Sarah had earned every silver strand in her hair and every laugh line around her eyes. 25 years of marine mammal rescue work had taught her that nature rarely followed human schedules or plans. Today would prove that lesson yet again. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her weathered rescue jacket, a gift from her late husband James, who'd been lost to cancer 3 years ago. The jacket, like so many things in her life, was both a comfort and a reminder of loss. She pulled out the phone to find a text from Tom Anderson, her lead assistant and former Coast Guard medic. "On my way. ETA 15 minutes. Maya and Keith confirmed they can make it too." Sarah smiled, grateful once again for her team's dedication. She'd called them all before dawn after receiving reports from the evening patrol about multiple entangled seals in the colony. The timing was crucial. They needed to work during low tide, and today's window would only last until early afternoon. While waiting for the others, Sarah unpacked her equipment from her trusted Toyota 4Runner, which had seen more rescue operations than she could count. Each piece of gear told its own story. The specially modified nets they designed after a particularly challenging rescue last spring, the cutting tools Keith had adapted from his firefighting days, the medical kit Maya had reorganized using insights from her research. The sound of approaching vehicles broke through the morning stillness. Tom's red Jeep appeared first, followed by Maya's hybrid sedan. Keith's ancient but meticulously maintained pickup truck rounded out the convoy, its bed loaded with additional rescue equipment. Tom Anderson stepped out first, his broad shoulders and military bearing unchanged from his Coast Guard days. At 38, he'd found his true calling in marine mammal rescue after serving 12 years in the Coast Guard. The transition hadn't been easy. Sarah had watched him struggle with PTSD from a particularly harrowing rescue operation at sea, but working with marine mammals had proven therapeutic. These days, his steady hands and calm demeanor made him invaluable during crisis situations. "Morning, Doc," he called out, already pulling on his waterproof gear. "Brought extra coffee. Figure we might need it." Maya Rodriguez emerged from her car next, tablet in hand as always. At 32, she was the youngest of their core team, but her brilliant mind and innovative research had revolutionized their rescue protocols. Her dark hair was pulled back in her characteristic tight braid, and her UC Berkeley marine biology sweatshirt bore the coffee stains of too many late nights analyzing data. "I've been reviewing our satellite tracking data," she announced, walking up to Sarah. "3 of our previously tagged seals from last month's rescues are in this colony. If we're lucky, we might be able to get some follow-up data while we're here." Keith Williams was the last to join them, moving with the deliberate pace of someone who'd learned the hard way that rushing led to mistakes. At 62, the retired firefighter had been involved in marine mammal rescue longer than anyone except Sarah. His silver mustache and weather-worn face gave him the look of an old sea captain, and his decades of technical rescue experience had saved both human and animal lives countless times. "Brought the new prototype nets," he said by way of greeting. "Figured if we're going to attempt something this ambitious, we might as well field test them." Sarah gathered her team around the back of her 4Runner, spreading out a detailed map of the beach area. The morning fog was beginning to thin, revealing more of the colony below. Through her binoculars, she could now make out the severity of the situation. "It's worse than the patrol reported," she said grimly. "I'm counting at least 6 severely entangled animals. 2 near the northern rocks with what looks like fishing line, 3 in the middle section with rope entanglements, and 1 young male to the south wrapped in what might be pieces of a net." Maya's quick intake of breath told Sarah she understood the implications. Their previous record for simultaneous rescues was 3 seals, and that had pushed their resources to the limit. 6 would require perfect coordination and more than a little luck. The tide gives us a window until about 2 p.m., Tom added, checking his waterproof watch. After that, most of those rocks will be underwater. Keith stroked his mustache thoughtfully. A habit Sarah had learned meant he was running calculations in his head. We'll need to split into teams. Work parallel instead of sequential. Risky, but I don't see another way to reach them all in time. Sarah nodded, having reached the same conclusion. Maya, what's the latest research say about multiple simultaneous interventions? Maya pulled up some data on her tablet. Limited studies suggest that as long as we maintain at least 50 yards between rescue operations, we can minimize colony-wide panic. The fog might actually help us. Limited visibility seems to reduce stress responses in neighboring seals. As they discussed strategy, Sarah noticed Tom had grown unusually quiet. She caught his eye, recognizing the distant look that sometimes preceded his anxiety attacks. Tom, talk to me. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Just reminded me of a mass casualty incident during my Coast Guard days. Multiple victims, limited time, tough decisions. He squared his shoulders. But we've got better odds here. Better equipment. Better team. Sarah squeezed his shoulder, a gesture of understanding between two people who'd seen too much suffering but refused to stop trying to help. We'll work smart, work safe. No unnecessary risks. The team spent the next 30 minutes meticulously preparing their gear and reviewing their rescue protocols. Each member had their specialized role. Sarah would lead the medical assessments and cutting operations. Tom would handle primary restraint. Maya would document and monitor colony behavior, and Keith would manage their technical equipment and safety systems. They divided their resources into 2 complete rescue kits. One for the northern team, Sarah and Maya, and one for the southern team, Tom and Keith. Each kit contained their essential tools. Specially designed nets with quick-release mechanisms, various cutting implements for different types of entanglements, medical supplies for immediate treatment, and documentation equipment. As they made their final preparations, Sarah gathered them for one last briefing. The fog had lifted enough to reveal the full scope of their challenge. 6 desperate animals, each fighting for survival against human-made debris that threatened to end their lives prematurely. Listen up, Sarah began, her voice carrying the weight of countless similar briefings. What we're attempting today goes beyond anything we've tried before. We're not just setting records, we're trying to save lives. Remember your training, trust your instincts, and above all, look out for each other. She paused, making eye contact with each team member. These animals don't know we're trying to help them. They're scared, they're in pain, and they will fight us. Stay focused, stay safe, and if anyone needs to call a timeout, do it. No questions asked. The team nodded, their expressions showing the perfect balance of determination and caution that Sarah had worked so hard to instill in them. They'd all seen what happened when rescuers let emotion override judgment. It usually ended badly for both humans and animals. The path down to the beach was treacherous even in good conditions. Today, with full gear and limited visibility, it required their complete concentration. Keith took point, his firefighting experience making him the natural choice for securing their route. He placed marking stakes at key points. They might need to evacuate quickly if things went wrong. Maya followed, documenting their descent with her GoPro. The footage would be valuable for training purposes, but Sarah suspected Maya also used it to distance herself somewhat from the more emotional aspects of their work. Behind her sophisticated research protocols and data analysis lay a heart that felt every animal's pain deeply. Tom brought up the rear, carrying the heaviest gear with the sure-footed grace of someone who'd done this countless times before. He'd been unusually quiet during their preparation, and Sarah made a mental note to check in with him after the operation. She'd seen too many good rescuers burn out from carrying their burdens alone. As they neared the beach, the sound of the seal colony grew louder. The morning fog created strange acoustics, making it difficult to pinpoint individual calls. Sarah knew from experience that this could work to their advantage. The confusion might help mask their approach. They established their base camp behind a large rocky outcropping that provided some shelter from the wind and waves. Keith immediately began setting up their emergency protocols, escape routes, rally points, and their emergency medical station. Even on routine operations, they never cut corners on safety. Maya consulted her tablet, pulling up thermal imaging from their drone survey. Temperature differentials suggest the entangled animals are running slightly hotter than their peers, probably inflammation from their injuries. I've marked their locations on our tactical map. Sarah studied the map, noting how the entangled seals had positioned themselves within the colony. It wasn't random. Injured animals often sought specific locations that balanced their need for protection with their compromised mobility. Understanding these patterns had been key to developing their rescue strategies over the years. Okay, Sarah decided. We'll start with the northern group. Maya, you're with me. Tom and Keith, monitor the southern targets but hold position until we signal. If the colony panics, we'll need you as backup. The team synchronized their radios and double-checked their hand signals. In the noise and chaos of a rescue operation, clear communication could mean the difference between success and failure. They'd learned that lesson the hard way 2 years ago, when a miscommunication had led to a near disaster during a complicated rescue. As Sarah and Maya moved into position, Sarah couldn't help but remember her first seal rescue, 25 years ago. She'd been a newly graduated veterinarian, full of textbook knowledge but short on practical experience. That first entangled seal, a young harbor seal wrapped in fishing line, had taught her more about patience, timing, and respect for wild animals than all her years of schooling. Their first target was a juvenile female, probably less than 2 years old. The fishing line wrapped around her neck had already begun cutting into the flesh, creating an angry wound that would soon become infected if left untreated. The seal's movements were sluggish, suggesting she was already experiencing the effects of her injury. Maya readied the net while Sarah prepared her cutting tools. They'd practiced this dance hundreds of times, each knowing exactly where the other would move, what they would need, how to respond to various scenarios. But practice was one thing. Doing it with an injured, frightened wild animal was another entirely. On my mark, Sarah whispered, watching the seal's breathing pattern. Timing was crucial. They needed to catch her at the moment when she was most relaxed, least likely to panic and bolt for the water. 3, 2, 1, now. Maya's net deployment was perfect, settling over the seal with just enough force to restrain but not enough to cause additional stress. Sarah moved in immediately, her experienced hands finding the entanglement through the netting. The seal barked in protest, causing nearby animals to raise their heads in alarm. Easy, little one, Sarah murmured, her fingers working quickly but gently to assess the extent of the entanglement. Maya, I need the curved scissors. This line's wrapped 3 times around. Maya handed over the tools while maintaining steady pressure on the net. She spoke quietly into her radio, updating Tom and Keith on their progress and the colony's reaction. So far, the other seals seemed more curious than alarmed. The fishing line had cut nearly a 1/4 inch into the seal's neck. Sarah worked methodically, carefully sliding her cutting tool between the line and flesh. One wrong move could cause additional injury or send the animal into panic. Years of experience guided her hands as she gradually freed the seal from its plastic prison. Last piece, she announced, making the final cut. The fishing line fell away, revealing the full extent of the wound beneath. Needs antibiotics. Maya, the long-acting injectable, please. While Maya prepared the medication, Sarah took a moment to check the seal's overall condition. Despite the severity of the wound, the animal's vitals were strong. Young seals were remarkably resilient, capable of recovering from injuries that would devastate older animals. The injection administered, they carefully removed the net. The seal wasted no time, scrambling toward the water with surprising speed for an injured animal. Sarah watched it disappear into the waves, knowing they'd given it its best chance at survival. One down, Maya said, already preparing their equipment for the next rescue. That wound was deeper than I expected. I'll add it to our entanglement database. Might help us identify high-risk fishing gear types. Sarah nodded, grateful once again for Maya's dedication to the broader mission of prevention. While they could save individual animals, The real solution lay in reducing the amount of dangerous debris in the marine environment. Their radios crackled with Keith's voice. "Heads up, team. Weather service just updated the forecast. Storm front moving in faster than expected. We might lose our window earlier than planned." Sarah looked at the horizon, noting the darkening clouds gathering offshore. They'd worked in bad weather before, but multiple rescues in deteriorating conditions would push their skills to the limit. The team would need to move faster while maintaining their safety protocols. "Tom, Keith," she responded. "Begin your approach on the southern group. Maya and I will handle the 2 remaining northern targets. Stay in contact and remember safety first." As she watched Tom and Keith begin their careful movement toward their targets, Sarah felt the familiar mix of pride and concern that came with leading this remarkable team. They were about to attempt something unprecedented, and while their chances of success were good, the risks were very real. Maya touched her arm, drawing her attention to their next target. This seal, an adult male, had somehow become entangled in both fishing line and a section of rope. The combination had created a complex web around his flipper that would require all their skill to remove safely. "Ready?" Maya asked, checking their supplies one last time. Sarah nodded, her focus narrowing to the task at hand. "Ready. Let's give this big guy his freedom back." The weather changed with the surprising speed that had made the Pacific coast notorious among mariners. The offshore clouds rolled in like a dark tide, bringing with them a strengthening wind that whipped salt spray into the air. The operation had suddenly become a race against both the rising water and the approaching storm. Tom and Keith had successfully freed their first seal, a young female wrapped in net fragments, when the first fat raindrops began to fall. The rescue had gone smoothly, thanks to Keith's modified restraint technique and Tom's steady hands. But now they faced their most challenging case. A large male seal with multiple entanglements, wedged between 2 rocks in a position that made conventional approach impossible. "Sarah," Keith's voice crackled over the radio. "We're going to need some guidance on this one. Can't get the net around him in this position." Sarah and Maya had just finished with their 3rd rescue. All their northern targets were now free, and were already moving to support the southern team. The wind had picked up considerably, making communication difficult even with their radio headsets. "Coming your way," Sarah responded, carefully picking her path across the increasingly slippery rocks. "Maya, document everything. This might be a new scenario for the manual." They found Tom and Keith crouched behind a boulder, studying their target. The seal's predicament was worse than it had appeared from a distance. Not only was it wedged between rocks, but the rope entangling it appeared to be attached to something underwater, limiting its movement even further. "He's been here at least several days," Keith reported, pointing out the wear patterns on the rocks. "Probably gets partially submerged at high tide. Must be absolutely exhausted." Sarah assessed the situation, her mind running through various rescue scenarios. Standard protocols wouldn't work here. They needed to innovate, and quickly. The tide was rising faster than usual, driven by the storm winds. "Maya, what's the data say about water temperature?" Sarah asked, already suspecting what they might need to do. Maya checked her instruments. 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold, but workable with our dry suits for about 30 minutes. Sarah nodded. "That's what I was afraid of. We're gonna need to go in after him." She turned to Tom. "Feel up to a water rescue?" Tom's face showed his understanding of what she was asking. His last Coast Guard mission, the one that still gave him nightmares, had involved a water rescue in stormy conditions. But he simply nodded, already unzipping his outer jacket to access his dry suit. "Keith, you're our safety line coordinator," Sarah continued. "Maya, monitor vitals and be ready with the medical kit. This is going to be tricky." The team moved with practiced efficiency, setting up their water rescue equipment. Keith established multiple anchor points for their safety lines while Maya prepared their emergency oxygen and hypothermia kits. The rain was falling steadily now, reducing visibility and making every surface treacherous. Sarah and Tom double-checked each other's dry suits and equipment, a ritual that reminded Sarah of her early diving days with James. He would have appreciated the methodical precision Tom brought to these procedures. "Remember," Sarah said as they prepared to enter the water, "we're dealing with a panicked animal in a confined space. If either of us feels unsafe, we signal immediately."
No heroics.
Tom nodded, his eyes focused on the waves breaking against the rocks. "Like you taught me. Dock slow is smooth, smooth is fast." Keith finished securing their safety lines and ran through his final checks. The retired firefighter's experience with technical rescues had saved their lives more than once, and his voice carried absolute authority as he reviewed their emergency protocols. 3 tugs means immediate extraction," he reminded them. "Maya has eyes on you with the thermal camera, and I've got tension on both lines. Don't fight the water, work with it." Maya approached with their specialized underwater cutting tools, ceramic blades that wouldn't rust and were less likely to cause injury if things went wrong. "I've calculated the tidal surge patterns. You'll have about 45 seconds between wave sets to work." Sarah and Tom entered the water on Keith's signal, timing their approach between wave sets. The dry suits protected them from the worst of the cold, but Sarah could still feel the ocean's power as they maneuvered toward the trapped seal. The animal watched them approach, too exhausted to show much fear. Getting close enough to assess the entanglement required careful coordination. Tom positioned himself to block the worst of the surge while Sarah examined how the ropes had created their trap. The underwater portion was attached to what appeared to be an old crab trap, long since abandoned but still causing harm. "Going to need both of us on this," Sarah called over their comm system. "Tom, can you secure his head end? I'll work on the underwater portion first." Tom moved into position, his Coast Guard training evident in every precise movement. "Ready when you are." Document. The next 20 minutes were a blur of focused activity. Between wave sets, they gradually cut away the complex web of ropes and netting. The seal, perhaps sensing their intent, remained surprisingly calm. Sarah had to dive repeatedly to free the underwater portions, each time fighting the strengthening current. "Storm's getting worse," Keith's voice crackled in their earpieces. "We've got maybe 15 minutes before I have to call it." Sarah surfaced from another dive, the last piece of rope in her hand. "Nearly there. Tom, how's your end?" "Almost. Got it," Tom grunted, making a final cut. "Head's free. Just need to clear his left flipper." The seal seemed to sense its impending freedom. It began to move more energetically, making their final tasks more challenging. A larger wave caught them off guard, pushing them against the rocks. Tom took the brunt of it, positioning himself to shield Sarah as she made the final cuts. "Easy, big guy," Sarah murmured, though the seal couldn't possibly hear her through the storm.
Almost there.
The last rope fell away. The seal hesitated for just a moment, as if disbelieving its sudden freedom, then shot through the gap between the rocks with surprising speed. They watched it disappear into the churning water, its powerful swimming showing no lasting damage from its ordeal. 5 down. Maya's excited voice came through the calm. 1 to go. "But you two need to get out now. Those waves are getting dangerous." Keith was already reeling in their safety lines, helping them navigate back to the relative safety of the beach. The storm had intensified dramatically during their time in the water, and the rising tide had claimed most of their working area. As they stripped off their dry suits, Sarah could see the final entangled seal. It was the youngest of the group, probably just weaned, with fishing line cutting into both flippers. In normal conditions, it would be a straightforward rescue. But with the storm approaching its peak and their energy depleted from the previous rescues, it would test their limits. "We can't leave him," Maya said, voicing what they were all thinking. "That fishing line. He won't survive another day." Sarah looked at her team. They were all exhausted, cold, and pushing their safety margins. Standard protocol would be to return another day. But standard protocol hadn't anticipated this situation, or this team. "One last push," she decided. "But we do this smart. Keith, Maya, will need your help on this one. Full team effort." What followed was perhaps the most coordinated rescue they'd ever attempted. Keith used his technical expertise to rig a temporary shelter against the wind and rain. Maya's research on seal behavior helped them predict and manage the pup's likely escape routes. Tom's steady hands and Sarah's medical skills combined to make the actual disentanglement as quick and stress-free as possible. The young seal, perhaps too tired to put up much resistance, submitted to their ministrations with unusual calm. When the last piece of fishing line fell away, Sarah felt the familiar mix of triumph and sadness that accompanied every rescue. Triumph at giving this animal another chance. Sadness that such rescues were necessary at all. 6. Maya announced as they watched the freed pup join its companions in the water. We actually did it. 6 rescues in one day. The team gathered their equipment in the growing storm, each lost in their own thoughts. They'd done more than set a record. They'd proven what was possible when skill, dedication, and teamwork came together perfectly. The storm that had threatened their final rescue developed into one of the worst systems to hit the coast that year. By the time they reached the rescue center, the wind was howling and the rain was coming down in sheets. But inside, as they dried off and warmed up with coffee and soup, there was a sense of quiet triumph. Maya was already at her computer, downloading data and beginning her preliminary report. The documentation from today is going to be invaluable, she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Nobody's ever recorded multiple simultaneous rescues like this before. Keith was methodically cleaning and checking their equipment, making notes about what needed repair or replacement. Those new nets worked better than I expected, he observed, though we might want to modify the handle design for better grip in wet conditions. Tom sat quietly by the window, watching the storm rage outside. Sarah brought him a fresh cup of coffee and sat beside him. Want to talk about it? He was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. You know, when I left the Coast Guard, I thought I was done with water rescues. Thought I couldn't handle that kind of pressure anymore. He turned to look at her. Today proved me wrong. Felt different. Cleaner somehow. Sarah understood. She'd seen many rescuers struggle with the emotional weight of their work. Different because we're not just saving lives, he said slowly. We're giving them back their freedom, their chance to be what they're meant to be. He smiled slightly. Plus, seals are better patients than some humans I've rescued. Less complaining. Their quiet conversation was interrupted by Maya's excited voice. Sarah, you need to see this. The team gathered around Maya's computer screen. She had pulled up the tracking data from their tagged seals, the ones they'd rescued in previous operations. Look at these movement patterns, she said, pointing to various spots on the map. Our previously rescued seals are not only surviving, they're thriving. Their range of movement, their diving patterns, everything indicates successful rehabilitation. Sarah felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was why they did what they did, not just to save animals in the moment, but to give them a genuine chance at a full life. Keith cleared his throat. Well, since we're all here, I have an announcement to make. The team turned to look at him. I've been putting off retirement, waiting for the right time. After today, seeing how well this team works together, how capable you all are, I think it's time. The news hit Sarah hard, though she'd been expecting it. Keith had been her mentor, her friend, and her steady support through countless rescues. But looking at Tom and Maya, she could see the team's future was in good hands. You've earned it, she said, hugging him. But don't think retirement means you're off the hook. We'll still need your expertise for training. As the storm continued outside, the team spent hours documenting their groundbreaking day, analyzing what had worked and what could be improved. Their success would change how marine mammal rescues were conducted up and down the coast, setting new standards for what was possible. Later that night, after the others had gone home, Sarah stood at the center's observation window, watching the storm gradually clear. The moon occasionally peeked through the clouds, its light catching the waves where, somewhere out there, 6 freed seals were swimming, hunting, living as nature intended. She thought about James, about all the times they'd stood together watching the ocean. He'd always said that every rescue was a story of hope, hope that humanity could repair at least some of the damage it had caused, hope that individual actions could make a difference. Today had been more than just a record-breaking rescue operation. It had been a testament to the power of dedicated people working together, to the importance of never giving up, and to the endless capacity of the human heart to care about the welfare of other living beings. Sarah smiled as she turned off the lights and prepared to head home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new rescues, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight, she could rest knowing that somewhere out there, 6 seals were swimming free, their stories forever intertwined with the remarkable team that had given them back their lives.